You know why? Because this is real. Look, we all have real, like this is real. Like we're not performing. We have bills to pay and we have sales and you're not hitting your numbers. That's real. The number might be real, but your interpretation of it is subjective.
Welcome to the Turning Point Podcast, where business growth meets personal development. We know as leaders and business owners, you're juggling a lot, and we've spent decades creating the best systems, tools, and shifts that bring you unimaginable success in your business and tremendous satisfaction in your personal life. That's just how we thrive around here. And now, here's your host, Jon Goldman, here to guide you to your own turning point. Let's get started.
Hi, this is Jon Goldman with Turning Point, and I'm with Tsippi, who is here as one of our Turning Point mentors. How you doing, Tsippi?
Hi, Jon. How are you today?
Great. So what we're going to talk about today is dysfunctional personalities in a family business and also how to deal with them so that when you face this issue in your own business, you'll be able to recognize it and also know what to do with it.
Yes, and we started talking about this last time, Jon. You were giving us the rundown on dysfunctional family businesses, and you said something so refreshing, which is that every family business has dysfunction in it, and it's just about managing it. So why is it that every family business has this dysfunction?
Why is it? Because we're called humans on planet Earth. And that means that we are going to have issues and it's going to be dysfunctional no matter what. The only problem is expectations. Expectations are the kiss of death. Having an expectation, it'll be fine, everything will work out, and people do exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and I won't be surprised when people underperform or when they do things that they shouldn't be doing. So that's the problem, is the expectations that it should be without any dysfunction. However, there are levels of, there's dysfunction and there's dysfunction. So what we're talking about here are some serious levels of dysfunction and how to put the fun back in dysfunction, because there is a way to have business where it's both fun, joyous, and productive. And so that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and you mentioned also that when family business goes wrong, it's like the most painful thing. But when it goes well, it's unbelievable because the level of trust and commitment and camaraderie. So I want to understand, like, I know that there are just basic personalities that come along in every family business. Everybody, and it's not even just family business, in any business, in life. And everybody's going to relate to it. And you really got this down to a science. So I'm excited for you to share that with us. Tell me a little bit about some of the personalities inside of these family businesses that you've seen.
Yeah, there's two big sides. One is the bad guys, and one is the victim guys. And we've got about 16 of them. And today we're only going to focus on a couple of them because it's better to go deep and really get something than to just skim across the water. So I want to talk about one that we're called Failing Fredo, right? Failing Fredo is based on The Godfather, the movie The Godfather. There's something called the Fredo effect. And there were three sons in The Godfather. So their father, who was the godfather of the mafia boss, and then he had three sons. He had the oldest son, who was the heir apparent. Then he had Fredo, who was the next in line. And then he had Michael. And what happened was that the oldest son, I don't recommend it, but if you're in the mafia business, it's very likely that you'll get killed. So he got killed.
Oh, gosh.
So therefore he got knocked out. And then it skipped over Fredo and went to Michael. What does that have to do with us? Why did it skip over Fredo? It skipped over Fredo because Fredo was not a performer. He wasn't a strong leader, and he wasn't living up to the potential of leading a family business. And so there's some people who came along and called it the Fredo effect. And I want to share with you a movie clip from The Godfather. And this will give us a little bit of an insight in terms of how family businesses work and what to do about it.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so this is Fredo. And what we're about to watch is a conversation between son number 3 and Fredo. And Fredo has been lazy in some ways. He hasn't performed in other ways. He is angry. He's sad. He's resentful. He feels like a victim. And Michael is the leader. And this is a conversation between the two of them, how Fredo acts and then how Michael acts. And we'll see how to deal with family business.
He said that you were being tough on the negotiations, but if they could get a little help, and close the deal fast. It'll be good for the family.
You believe that story? You believe that?
He said there was something in it for me, on my own.
I've always taken care of you, Fredo.
You notice that there's a victim mentality going on, and he was offered another deal from a competitor, and he took the deal because he wants so much to be seen and be recognized. And Michael's seeing right through it.
Taking care of me? You're my kid brother, and you take care of me? Did you ever think about that? Huh? Did you ever once think about that? Send Fredo off to do this, send Fredo off to do that.
I experience this on a regular basis with brothers who run businesses, and one of them is actually becomes the leader, and the other one is resentful on a regular basis, but then the leader feels stuck because what am I supposed to do? He's not actually qualified to do anything more, and he hasn't performed yet, but there are ways out of this.
Let Fredo take care of some Mickey Mouse nightclub somewhere. Send Fredo to pick somebody up at the airport. I'm your older brother, Mike, and I was stepped over.
That's the way Pop wanted it.
It ain't the way I wanted it. I can handle things. I'm smart. Not like everybody says. Like dumb, I'm smart, and I want respect.
That's what everybody wants, is respect. And so we're going to see in just a moment is the anger and the resentment that's built up. And usually, it's not quite so clear like this as in the movie. Watch.
Is there anything you can tell me about this investigation? Anything more?
The Senate lawyer, Questad. He belongs to Roth.
Fredo, you're nothing to me now. You're not a brother. You're not a friend. I don't want to know you or what you do. I don't want to see you at the hotels. I don't want you near my house. When you see our mother, I want to know a day in advance so I won't be there.
The reason why this is so complicated is because what happens in family businesses, it's family and his business. And when he's like, I don't want to see you. I just spoke to someone today that they're going through a rough time, and they're like, they want to send a letter to another person in the family saying, I don't want ever to do anything with you again. And I'm sending a restraining order, and it can happen. Usually it's not quite so extreme like that. So that's why it's so complicated in a family business, because on one side we're family and you have unconditional love. On the other side, like, we have to produce. And then if I mess up in business, it translates over to how I view in our personal life as well.
Jon, don't you think it just makes sense to keep to the rule of not mixing family and business? I mean, this is so complicated.
It's probably better not to get married or have children either, because it's very complicated. And so if you want to avoid complication, it's best not to live life, because that way you won't have to be so stressed out. There's pros and cons to it. It is dangerous. And I can tell you from personal experience, both being brought up in a family business and I've had my wife work for me. I've had my sons work for me. I've had my daughter work for me. And my wife and I, one of the best things we ever did for our love life is stop working together. On the other hand, I worked really well with my brothers, and I've also had a daughter that worked, and it was tremendous. So when it works well, it works really, really well. And if you're going to give someone an opportunity, you'd rather give someone an opportunity in your business. So I think that I would not write it off, because it's tremendous when it works well.
And so, let's go back to this Fredo effect that you were discussing before. So Fredo is the middle son, obviously, and he feels so resentful that he's been skipped over, and yet he may not have the criteria and credentials. How do we navigate this?
Okay, so I'm going to share some images with you from our book, Wait. Wait stands for WAIT, which is what am I thinking? Why am I talking?
And
And
this book, everybody can grab it at book.myturningpoint.com. It is awesome. It has changed people's lives and businesses. We've gotten such incredible feedback. It's a work of art. So yes, go ahead.
Literally, it's a work of art. It's an illustrated book, so it's really it's written for busy people, and it's filled full of illustrations. It's simple, but it's not simplistic. So there's a few strategies that you use. First of all, you have to understand that oftentimes they feel like a victim. And when you feel like a victim, you're going to act like a victim. One of the personalities in this style of the Fredo effect is also Victor the victim. And when he's the victim, so he needs to realize that he needs to choose. He shifts from being a victim to a chooser. And instead of asking the question, why me? Ask the question, what is this happening asking of me?
So break that down for me. Like I feel, and you talk about this a lot, and I love it when you come home and you're like, "Oh, poor me, I've had such a hard day." And like we all go there. Like we're all victim at some point of the day. Like what? So we're feeling in this low place. What do we do?
Right. So I'm going to share with you several different strategies you could do. One of them is to realize that I'm not a victim. I am a chooser. And I myself have the ability to choose and create my own life. I'm a co-creator in life. And instead of being a victim, I'm a chooser. And instead of viewing my brother as the persecutor and me the victim, instead I switch it and I'm the chooser and he's the challenger. And that's an internal thing that happens. Look, when you start feeling like a victim, you feel like you're filled full of anxiety. And the main culprit here is understanding that it's an inside-out game as opposed to an outside-in game. What does that mean? That our experience...
Sorry, I just had a mind-blown moment for a second. So when you feel like a victim, it's because you're feeling anxious, like out of control?
You can feel a victim for any particular reason. But when you are a victim, usually that's coming from what we call SAT, stressful, anxious thinking. And here's an image that if you're watching this, so there's an image of what SAT looks like, which is stressful, anxious thinking. And that comes oftentimes from being a gap spotter. And so a gap spotter, we have another personality in the family business known as Gary the Gap Spotter. And that means that I've been trained, like most people in business, to look for problems and solutions. However, when you do that, the whole world and everybody starts looking like a problem to fix. And guess what? Nobody wants to feel like a problem. And when you start looking at the world like that, all you're doing is problem, 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 solution. And so the personality that happens from this is generated from stressful, anxious thinking. You become a bit of a gap spotter, and then you can end up like a Fredo, or you can end up like lazy Lenny. It's like, I'm entitled. I don't need this kind of stuff. And you're failing. Failing Fredo is a really bummer position to be in. And you're like baby Brandon's like, oh, I should take care. You should take care of me. What take care of you? So it's a cross in a family business between, if I have parents in the family business, I was brought up being taken care of by you. If I have an older brother, I was brought up by being taken care of by an older brother. We take care of one ourselves. On the other hand, it's a meritocracy as opposed to an aristocracy. And that's where it gets confusing. So the first thing we spoke about is switching from victim to chooser. And instead of asking the question, why did this happen to me? Ask the question, what is this happening asking of me? And why do we not see that? Because we're in a lower state of consciousness. When we're in a lower state, all we see are problems. When we're in a higher state, we're not so enrolled in the story. And we have another personality that we have to deal with, which is rumination.
Sorry, Jon. So when you're feeling like that and you're feeling victimized, so what is this happening asking of me? Like, what should Fredo be thinking? Like, what is this happening asking of him?
That's exactly right. So he is feeling passed over. That's what's going on for me. So now, what is this happening asking of me? How can I rise to the occasion? What's the message I'm receiving? If I get enrolled in this story, like I was about to share with you, there's another personality called Ruminating Riley. Ruminating wryly is someone who indulges in overthinking. If you ruminate on something, that's actually an indulgence. If you like to ruminate on all the bad things that are happening, you have no right to do that. Of course, you have a right. You can do whatever you want. But if you want to be feeling good and you want to be effective in your life, rumination is a certain kiss, is a sure way to ruin your life. And so what we want to do is, this line is very simple, but very powerful. Coach them in or coach them out, but coach them. So when you have someone that's feeling like that, there's two sides of it. One is the person themselves and the awareness that they can increase in, hey, I'm acting like a victim here. How can I say, what is happening, asking of me, instead of why is this happening to me? And how am I ruminating on this? Then there's also the other side. If you have someone in your family like this, you want to coach them, or you want to get them coaching. And that means you want to coach them in or coach them out, but coach them. And that requires guts, because that means you're going to have courageous conversations, and that's scary. And that means that we have to have honest conversations. So there's 3 or 4 things I'd like to suggest in terms of specific tools you could do. Number 1 is be a fly on the wall.
Sorry, I just for a second here. You have Fredo, he's mad. You have Michael, who's mad or needs to cut off ties. Who's coaching? Like, who is coaching in and coaching out? Who's asking these questions in the heat of the moment? I'm not seeing how this is practical.
Thank you. It depends on the situation. It could be that we have a conversation with Michael and say, Michael, this is before he makes his decision that he's out. So first of all, mafia bosses, they're not exactly coach him in or coach him out. They're like, kill them. So that's not the model that we're using. It's wonderful and fun for a movie, but it's terrible in terms of managing. Our first goal is to coach them in before coaching them out. And oftentimes it takes some time before you can really determine whether a person can stay, whether they can't. There's one family I'm working with right now. It's been over 2 years of working with a couple of brothers, and one is the president, the other is not. And when we started, the president could not stand the other brother. Wow. And was so disappointed, so frustrated. And but over time, the other brother has been amazing, and he's stepped up into his power, and he's moved away from the shadow of the father and the brother. And that took time to build confidence. And then, first he had to say, all right, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to make a commitment. So he made a commitment, and then he learned capabilities along the way, and then he built some confidence once he built some capabilities. So,
and that's so hard because he's got all this negative pressure around him. So he's built himself
we worked
up.
On both sides. We worked on the father, on the brother, and on the other brother. And so we're working on all the different levels. Sometimes we're not invited in all the different levels. Sometimes we are. And sometimes not everybody is coachable. That's the hard facts. Not everybody is coachable.
So then what? So I have 2 questions. Hold on. Who is doing the coaching? Like, is this an internal coaching thing that can happen with the family?
That's a great question. So we have a team of psychologists and coaches and consultants and mentors. And so we're often brought in from outside, because there's a saying that you cannot free yourself from jail. And if you're seeing the video part of this, we have an image here of a person trying to get out of jail. You can't. Someone comes in from the outside and they can pull the bars off. They can take a rope, throw around the bars and pull it off. We cannot free ourselves from jail. The dynamic is that of interdependence, not independence. I've never met a successful person who's very successful that I did it my way. There's no such thing as like success all by yourself. Everyone has to learn how to do, there's OPM and OPW. OPM is other people's money. OPW is other people's work. Yes. And so the only way that you're going to be successful is through other people's work, working with other people. And that means we can't free ourselves. We are interdependent. I can't do what you can do. You're really good at bringing out the best out of people. You're good at promoting. I'm not so good at that. I'm good at doing what I do, which is leading a company, which is seeing issues and creating strategies and facilitating all this. So that's how we work together. We can't free ourselves from jail. So one way is to have someone outside come in. The other way is to learn yourself how to coach yourself, or someone in the organization becomes a champion and becomes an internal coach. Those are the 3 options you have.
Okay, interesting. So now you were saying there's 4 things somebody could do.
That's right. So let me give you number 1 of 4 is we call it moving to fly on the wall. And you can get this in the book as well. It's one of the strategies. So you might say to a person that you're thinking to yourself, he's so wrong. I'm going to tell him why he's wrong and what he's got to do about it. So we get enrolled in a story. Everything's a story, Tsippi. It's a story. I'm enrolled in a story. You're enrolled in a story. I'm from the world of advertising and marketing. We're all about creating stories. So you want to watch that. On the other hand, like, I want to tell you how hard it is for me and it's difficult, and I'm going to enroll you in a story. And you're going to enroll me in a story, and you got your kids, and you got to try to get this podcast done in time, and you got a husband, and you got to make dinner, and also you have so many things going on, and you can enroll me in your story. And guess what? It's a story. So I can be enrolled in my story. The next step moving from me to second position is I can really understand what it's like to be in your shoes. That's moving second position. Moving to a third position is a fly on the wall, seeing you and I in a room together. And by shifting positions, I'm no longer as enrolled in the story. And so that's one of the things that you could do is an effective mentor can come in and say, hey, look at what's happening. When we pull ourselves out, we can start to raise our awareness and see ourselves in other people. That's the first of the 4 strategies.
So can I do that without a mentor? Like, can I fly on the wall myself?
Right?
Can I get myself into the state of being a fly on the wall
At
myself?
At any moment, in any conversation, you can take a deep breath. Say, wait, what am I thinking? Why am I talking? You can move into the other person's shoes, and then you can move out of both of our shoes and see the two of us in a dynamic. And when you see that, you see a very different position. And that comes from taking a breath and realizing that I'm like in the basement of my thinking, and I want to rise up a little bit because I'm not in a place of consciousness at all.
Wow. Yeah, what comes next?
What comes next is resist giving advice.
We all love.
So draw out the solution and don't tell them the answer, because what we're looking for are self-correcting leaders, and nobody wants to be told anything. We only grow when we have an insight ourselves. You cannot force an insight on anybody else. And do you know when? I can tell you exactly when a person is going to get the insight. You know when they're ready?
I don't know when they're ready.
When they are ready. You can't force an insight on anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. I might be ready for them to get it. Don't you see it? What are you missing? And so with your husband, with your wife, with your kids, with your employees, with your boss, like you can see it so clearly and they can't see it. But when they get the insight themselves, that's the So for example, instead of giving advice like, oh, I think you ought to fire your secretary, you say, oh, I hear you. So what's your next best step here with your secretary? Listen, reflect, and then ask a question. Questions are the answers. So the second strategy of these 4 strategies is draw out the solution. Instead of advice giving, you become more of a coach instead of a cop, which brings us to our next piece, which is being a coach as opposed to a cop. And the key of being a coach as opposed to a cop here is to validate, validate, validate. Maybe you didn't get that. Validate, validate, validate. So meaning that most people are like, oh, you're making such a big deal out of it. Just ignore it. Just get over it. Just get over it. Yeah. It's like when Betty Ford said, oh, you're poor, just go buy a house. Or just say no to drugs. Are you kidding me?
That's going to work.
The first step of being a coach as opposed to a cop, which is what most people are in business. They're cops. What does that mean? It means I'm gap spotting. I'm catching people doing the wrong thing on a regular basis. And so instead, I want to move into being a coach. And in doing that, it's like, oh, it makes sense you feel frustrated. And wow, this must be really hard. So what do you need to move forward? What just happened? I stepped into their shoes and I'm asking some questions. I'm validating what they're saying. Even though I think it might be silly, and even though I don't think it should be frustrating, I acknowledge where they're at. So I validate. Everybody wants to be validated. Right?
Yeah.
So what we saw with Fredo, like neither of them were validating one another.
Mm,
They were totally
that's
enrolled in the story.
interesting. Yeah, that's a good point.
And Michael was not interested in being a coach. He was interested in being a
No,
cop. And because their value system is that of only external success,
so
right?
interesting
Oh,
because
maybe
like
loyalty, but yeah.
no, as you're talking, and I want to hear because I know you said the three things, there's four things. One of them is being a fly on the wall, and the second is not giving advice, but rather drawing it out. And the third is validating. I'm just getting into the mindset of the person who is acting as the leader here. And it takes such strength and resilience because they're also so emotional and they have so much at stake and who
Yeah.
knows what's going on. And wow, I mean, this is asking a tremendous amount. It's radical adulthood or whatever you want to call it, like tremendous leadership. You're setting a high bar.
You know why? Because this is real. Look, we all have real, like this is real. Like we're not performing. We have bills to pay and we have sales and you're not hitting your numbers. That's real. The number might be real, but your interpretation of it is subjective. We made a profit or we didn't make a profit. Yes, that's true. But whether there's a lot of stuff that comes along with it, like you're a loser, you don't care about anybody, you're always late, you're self-centered, you're irresponsible, that's all judgment. And so when we shift from being a cop to a coach, we can be much more empathetic and we start seeing it in their position. I want to get to the
Yeah,
last
what's the
piece.
last one?
Yeah. So the last one is about the word yet. So when you shift from finality, which is labeling them, you know what? He's a loser. That label sticks a person forever. So instead, be patient with them and let's focus on the word yet. You know what? We're so stuck. You don't know how to get us ready for the IRS audit. Oh, you know what? You might not know yet, but you will. So the word yet and the concept of I actually have a belief that we're never, ever, ever stuck. And then when you can share that belief with someone else that we're not stuck here, we're never stuck, then we always have an opportunity. And by using the word yet, and yet doesn't always mean that it's going to work out the way we want it to work out. Yet might mean that we're going to coach you in or coach you out, but we're going to coach you. And that might mean that this is not the right job for you. I'm going through a family business ordeal right now where one of the players, it's not the right fit for him. He's a square peg in a round hole and he feels lousy. And everyone else feels lousy about it. And everyone else is resentful and they're being quiet. And there's what we call fake harmony. So when you start to focus on yet, which is a wonderful concept from positive psychology, and the idea is in a growth mindset that you don't know how to do it yet, and that's okay. So what we covered just now was some of the personalities that come with the Fredo effect or the baby Brandon or Victor the victim or the people who are feeling like I'm stuck or failing Fredo or lazy Lenny. These are all people who are not performing and the dynamics that come with it. And we spoke about a few strategies how to deal with it. Okay, so we have a really special gift for you. It's called the trigger dance. And once you can identify your position in this journey of how I'm getting triggered and who's triggering me and what are the different personalities. So in the trigger dance, this will allow you to assess the other people in your organization, assess yourself, and then you'll be able to put the fun back in dysfunctions because we all got some dysfunction going on.
Yeah, and I love this particular offer that you're talking about, Jon, where you're not just giving tips, but real strategies that work that can break the cycle of conflict and turn the family blowups into breakthroughs. I've been blown away by just seeing this, and everybody could grab that now at offers.myturningpoint.com/family. That's offers.myturningpoint.com/family.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Jon. Thanks for coming on today. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Our mission at Turning Point is to help leaders actualize their potential. And we know there are a lot of things in the way of that. The best way to make significant progress is by making a plan. And the first step to making a plan is understanding where we are, what our potential is, what's holding us back, and how we can play to our strengths and compensate for our weaknesses. We've created an awesome assessment that helps you identify all of these things and sets you on the path to living with joy, making more money, and increasing your productivity. We love this assessment and know you will too. Take it at myturningpoint.com/quiz. That's myturningpoint.com/quiz. Thanks for tuning in and see you next time.